Edah had always believed that love should feel safe. Not loud. Not forced. Not painful. Safe. When she met Daniel, she did not fall in love immediately. It started slowly, like morning sunlight entering a room. They met at a friend's birthday party. She remembered how he stood in a corner, laughing at something someone said. He wasn't the loudest man in the room. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. But there was something calm about him. Later that evening, he offered her a drink. "You look bored," he said with a small smile. "I'm just observing," she replied. "Observing what?" "People pretending to enjoy small chops." He laughed. And that was how it began. They started talking after that day. First as friends. Then as something more. Daniel was gentle. He listened when she spoke. He asked about her dreams. He remembered small details about her stories. Edah had dated before, but this felt different. With Daniel, she did not feel like she had to compete or prove herself. She could just be. They dated for 2 years before he proposed. It was not in a fancy restaurant. It was not in front of a crowd. It was in a small living room, on a quiet Sunday evening. "I don't want a life where you are not beside me," he told her. And she said yes without thinking twice. Their wedding was simple but beautiful. Friends and family gathered in joy. There was dancing, laughter, and too much food. Edah remembered looking at Daniel during the reception and thinking, "This is my person." Marriage started like a sweet dream. They both worked hard. Edah worked in a marketing firm. She loved her job. She loved dressing up every morning, wearing her heels, carrying her handbag with confidence. She enjoyed contributing financially to their home. Daniel worked in finance. His job required long hours sometimes, but he never complained. He always said he was building a future for them. In the evenings, they would cook together. Sometimes they argued playfully about who made better jollof rice. On weekends, they visited their parents or went out for movies. They talked about everything. "How many children do you want?" Daniel once asked. "2," Edah replied quickly. "A boy and a girl." "Why only 2?" "Because I want to rest in this life," she laughed. Daniel smiled. "We'll see what God decides." They agreed on something important: they would always support each other's dreams. Edah made it clear she never wanted to lose herself in marriage. Daniel promised he would never stop her from chasing her goals. "I want us to grow together," he said. And for a while, it felt like nothing could shake them. Exactly 1 year after their wedding, Edah started feeling different. She was always tired. Food smells made her uncomfortable. One morning, while brushing her teeth, she suddenly felt dizzy. Daniel noticed. "Are you okay?" he asked, holding her shoulders. "I don't know," she said slowly. "Maybe I'm just stressed." But deep down, she had a feeling. That evening, she bought a pregnancy test on her way home from work. Her hands trembled as she waited in the bathroom. 2 lines. She stared at it for a long time. Her heart began to race. Tears filled her eyes. She stepped out of the bathroom quietly. Daniel was in the living room, checking something on his laptop. "Daniel," she called softly. He looked up. "Yes." She handed him the test without speaking. It took him a few seconds to understand. Then his eyes widened. "Are you serious?" he whispered. Edah nodded. Daniel jumped up, lifted her in the air, and spun her around. He laughed loudly like a child who just received the best gift in the world. "I'm going to be a father," he shouted. That night, they didn't sleep much. They talked about baby names. They talked about moving to a bigger apartment. They talked about how they would raise their child with love and discipline. The next day, they told their parents. Edah's mother screamed with joy over the phone. Daniel's father said prayers immediately. Both families were excited. It was the first grandchild on both sides. Pregnancy changed Edah's body quickly. She felt heavy. She felt emotional. Some days she cried without knowing why. Daniel tried his best to be patient. He attended hospital appointments with her. He held her hand during scans. Then came the day that shocked them. They were sitting in the doctor's office during a routine ultrasound. The doctor looked at the screen carefully. His face changed slightly. "Is everything okay?" Edah asked nervously. The doctor smiled slowly. "Everything is fine," he said. "But there's something you need to know." Daniel squeezed Edah's hand. "You're not having one baby," the doctor continued. "You're having 3. Edah blinked. 3. Daniel repeated. "Yes. Triplets." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Edah laughed nervously. "That's not funny." "I'm serious," the doctor said gently. 2 boys. 1 girl. On the way home, they were both quiet. Finally, Daniel spoke. "God really didn't listen when you said 2 children." Edah burst into laughter. Triplets. The news spread quickly through their families. Some people said, "Double blessing." Others said, "Oh, God will help you." The pregnancy became more difficult as months passed. Edah stopped working earlier than planned because her body couldn't handle the stress anymore. Carrying 3 babies was not easy. Her back hurt. Her legs swelled. Sleeping became uncomfortable. Daniel tried to help more at home. He cooked sometimes. He cleaned when he could. He reminded her that she was strong. "You're carrying 3 human beings," he would say proudly. "You're a superhero." The night she went into labor, it was raining heavily. Daniel drove nervously to the hospital. His hands shook on the steering wheel. He kept praying under his breath. The delivery was long and stressful. Edah felt pain like she had never known before. She squeezed Daniel's hand so tightly that he almost lost feeling in his fingers. Then finally, a cry filled the room. Then another. Then another. 3 tiny voices. Edah cried immediately when she heard them. Daniel's eyes filled with tears as he saw them for the first time. So small. So fragile. So beautiful. 2 boys. 1 girl. When their families arrived at the hospital, the room was filled with happiness. Edah's mother kept thanking God. Daniel's father held one of the boys carefully, smiling proudly. Edah lay on the hospital bed, exhausted but glowing. She looked at her children and felt something powerful in her heart. Love multiplied by 3. That day, she felt complete. She and Daniel talked quietly that night in the hospital room while the babies slept in their small cribs. "We'll raise them well," Daniel said softly. "We'll do it together," Edah replied. They made plans again. Edah would stay home for 1 year to focus on the babies. After their first birthday, she would return to work. They would hire a nanny to help. They would manage everything as a team. It sounded perfect. As she watched Daniel carry their daughter gently in his arms, Edah felt safe. She did not know then that love could be tested. But for now, in that quiet hospital room filled with soft baby breaths and family laughter, everything felt right. And she believed, with all her heart, that nothing would ever break what they had built together. The first few months after the triplets were born felt like a beautiful storm. There was laughter. There were tears. There was noise. So much noise. The house that was once quiet and peaceful was now filled with crying, tiny footsteps, bottles, diapers, and baby clothes hanging everywhere. Edah sometimes stood in the middle of the living room and turned slowly, wondering how 3 small humans could create so much chaos. But even in the chaos, she felt love. The babies had different personalities from the start. The first boy, Ethan, cried loudly and wanted attention immediately. The second boy, Noah, was calmer but stubborn. Their daughter, Lily, was quiet but observant. She watched everything with wide, curious eyes. Edah learned to recognize each of their cries. She knew who was hungry, who was sleepy, and who simply wanted to be carried. But knowing did not make it easier. Triplets meant everything happened 3 times. 3 diapers. 3 baths. 3 feeding bottles. 3 times the laundry. Sometimes when one baby finally slept, another would wake up. There were nights Edah barely closed her eyes. She would sit on the edge of the bed, holding one baby while rocking another with her foot. Daniel helped in the beginning. He tried to wake up at night. He changed diapers. He even sang badly to calm them down. They laughed about it sometimes. "We should open a daycare," Daniel joked once. Edah looked at him with tired eyes. "We already have one." They were exhausted, but they were together. As months passed, the children began to crawl. Then they began to stand. Soon they were walking unsteadily around the house, bumping into chairs and laughing. That was when the real work started. Edah could no longer leave them alone even for 1 minute. If she went to the kitchen, one would try to climb the couch. If she went to the bathroom, another would pull books from the shelf. Her day started at 5 a.m. She would wake up before the children to prepare their food. She would quickly wash bottles and sweep the living room. Sometimes she drank tea while standing because sitting down felt like a luxury. By 6 a.m., someone would cry. Then the day would officially begin. Daniel's job also became more demanding. His company was growing, and he wanted to impress his bosses. He started leaving earlier and coming back later. "I need to work harder now," he told Edah one evening. "We have 3 children." "I understand," she replied gently. And she did understand. But understanding did not remove her loneliness. During the day, Edah had no adult conversation. Her world became diapers, cartoons, baby food, and cleaning. She loved her children deeply, but sometimes she missed the woman she used to be. She missed wearing heels. She missed meetings. She missed hearing someone call her name without crying after it. On the children's first birthday, both families came over. It was a small celebration. Balloons filled the living room. The children smashed cake with their tiny hands. Everyone laughed and took pictures. That night, after everyone left and the house was quiet again, Edah sat beside Daniel. "It's been 1 year," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "I was thinking, maybe it's time I returned to work like we planned." Daniel was quiet for a moment. He looked at the sleeping children through the half-open door. "I've been thinking too," he said slowly. "Maybe you should stay home a little longer." Edah frowned slightly. "Why?" "They are still small. 3 of them. It won't be easy for a nanny to handle. I'll provide everything we need. You don't have to stress yourself." Edah looked down at her hands. She had been thinking about this moment for months. She had imagined going back to the office. Dressing up again. Feeling independent. But she also looked at her children and felt guilty. "What if they need me?" she whispered. "They do need you," Daniel said gently. "No one can care for them like their mother." It sounded sweet. It sounded loving. So she agreed. "Okay," she said. "I'll stay." Daniel smiled and kissed her forehead. At first, nothing changed. But slowly, very slowly, something shifted. Daniel started coming home later than before. When he entered the house, he didn't smile immediately anymore. His face looked tired. Stressed. He would drop his bag and look around the living room. Toys scattered. Crumbs on the floor. Small shoes near the door. One evening, he sighed loudly. Why is the house always like this? Edah blinked. I cleaned in the afternoon, she explained. They scattered everything again. Daniel didn't reply. Another evening, he pointed at a pile of folded clothes on the chair. Why haven't you kept this? I was about to, she said. Lily started crying, and then he waved his hand and walked into the bedroom. Edah stood there, confused. She told herself he was just stressed. But the comments continued. The kids look rough. Why is dinner late? You had the whole day. The whole day. Those words hurt the most. One afternoon, after finally putting the children down for a nap, Edah sat on the kitchen floor and cried quietly. She was tired in a way that sleep could not fix. She tried harder after that. She cleaned more often. She organized better. She cooked earlier. But with 3 toddlers, the house never stayed perfect. Daniel stopped asking about her day. If she tried to tell him, he would scroll through his phone or nod without listening. One evening, she attempted again. Today was hard, she began softly. Ethan had a fever. I had to take all 3 of them to the clinic alone. Daniel loosened his tie. That's normal. Kids get sick, he replied. She waited for him to say more. He didn't. Instead, he asked, did you pay the electricity bill? Her heart sank. It wasn't that he shouted every day. It was worse. He became distant. Cold. Edah started feeling like a housekeeper instead of a partner. Some nights, she lay beside him in bed, staring at the ceiling. She wanted to ask him what was wrong. She wanted to ask if he was unhappy. But she was afraid of the answer. The children, unaware of the growing tension, continued to fill the house with noise and laughter. One afternoon, while she was bathing the boys, Lily emptied a box of cereal on the living room floor. Edah laughed weakly when she saw it. Of course, she muttered. She cleaned it up quickly before Daniel came home. But she could not clean her exhaustion. When Daniel entered that evening, he looked around as usual. The house was neat. Dinner was ready. The children were bathed. Still, he looked dissatisfied. The kid's hair looks rough, he said. Edah felt something inside her slowly breaking. I braided it this morning, she replied. He shrugged. That night, as she lay in bed, she finally admitted something to herself. She was not just tired physically. She was tired emotionally. She missed her husband. Not the man who complained. Not the man who looked at her with disappointment. She missed the man who called her his superhero. And she didn't know how to bring him back. The house was still full of love. But now, there was also silence growing in the corners. And sometimes, silence can be louder than shouting. The tension in the house had been growing quietly for weeks. It wasn't loud at first. It wasn't shouting or fighting. It was the silence. The cold looks. The way Daniel's voice had lost its warmth. Edah felt it every day, even when no words were spoken. That evening started like every other. The children were restless. Ethan refused to nap. Noah kept pulling books from the shelf. Lily cried because she wanted to be carried while Edah was cooking. The house looked like a small storm had passed through it. Edah moved quickly from one room to another. She picked up toys, stirred the pot on the stove, wiped a spill off the floor, and tried to calm 3 crying toddlers at the same time. Her head ached. By 7:30 p.m., Daniel was not home. He usually arrived by 6:30. Edah checked her phone. No message. She tried calling him. The call rang once, then twice, then went unanswered. She told herself not to overthink. Maybe traffic was bad. Maybe he had extra work. By 8:15 p.m., the children were hungry and cranky. She fed them alone, cleaned their hands, changed their clothes, and managed to settle them in front of a cartoon. Her heart felt heavy. At 8:40 p.m., she heard the gate open. The sound of Daniel's car pulling in. Relief and anger mixed inside her chest. The door opened. Daniel stepped inside, looking tired. His shirt sleeves were rolled up. His face looked tense. "You're late," Edah said quietly. He dropped his keys on the table. "I know." She waited for an explanation. When none came, she asked softly, "Is everything okay?" Daniel let out a sharp breath. "I had work," he replied shortly. She swallowed. "You could have called." That was when his mood changed. He turned to look at her fully for the first time that evening. "I don't have time to report every movement I make," he said. Edah blinked. "I wasn't asking for a report," she said gently. "I was just worried." Daniel looked around the living room. Toys on the floor. A small stain on the couch. Shoes scattered near the door. His face tightened. "Why is this place always a mess?" he asked. Edah felt her chest tighten. "I cleaned earlier," she explained. "They scattered everything again before you came." Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. "So what exactly do you do all day?" The words landed like a slap before the real one came. Edah stared at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean I go out every day to work a real job," he snapped. "To make money. To provide for you and your kids. While you sit at home doing nothing." The room suddenly felt very small. The children went quiet, sensing the change in the air. "Doing nothing," Edah repeated, her voice shaking slightly. Daniel's voice grew louder. "You've become lazy, Edah. The house is never properly arranged. The kids look unkempt. Dinner is sometimes late. What exactly is so hard?" Edah felt tears burn behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Lazy," she whispered. "Daniel, I wake up before everyone. I barely sleep. I take care of 3 toddlers alone all day. I cook. I clean. He cut her off. "Stop exaggerating." Her heart broke a little more. "I'm not exaggerating," she said, her voice trembling. "You don't see what I do because you're not here. You think it's easy. Try doing it for one day." Before she could finish her sentence, his hand moved. The sound echoed sharply in the room. A slap. For a second, everything froze. Edah's head turned slightly from the force. Her cheek burned. Her ears rang. The children stared. Daniel stared at his own hand as if it didn't belong to him. He had never done that before. Not once. Edah slowly lifted her hand to her cheek. She did not cry. She did not scream. She just looked at him. The disappointment in her eyes hurt more than any words could. Daniel opened his mouth slightly. But pride held him back. Instead of apologizing immediately, he said nothing. That silence destroyed something between them. Edah bent down quietly and picked up Lily, who had started crying softly. She carried her to the bedroom without another word. Daniel remained standing in the living room, breathing heavily. The house that was once filled with noise now felt painfully quiet. That night, they slept on opposite sides of the bed. Daniel turned his back. Edah stared at the ceiling. Her cheek still hurt. But what hurt more was her heart. She remembered the man who had spun her around when she told him she was pregnant. She remembered the man who called her his superhero. Where had he gone? Tears rolled silently into her ears. She did not wake him. She did not speak. She made a decision. Before sunrise, Edah got up quietly. The house was still dark. She packed a small bag, a few clothes, some important documents, her phone charger. She walked into the children's room. They were sleeping peacefully. She sat beside their bed and watched them for a long moment. Her heart felt like it was breaking into pieces. She kissed each of them gently. "I love you," she whispered. Then she stood up. She walked past Daniel, who was still asleep. For a brief second, she paused. She looked at him. Part of her wanted to wake him up, to give him one more chance to say sorry. But another part of her remembered the sound of the slap. She walked out of the house quietly and closed the door behind her. The morning air was cool against her face. She felt empty. But she also felt strong. Daniel woke up late that morning. The house felt different. Too quiet. "Edah," he called from the bedroom. No answer. He checked the bathroom. Empty. He walked into the living room. Her slippers were gone. He felt a small panic rise in his chest. He checked the wardrobe. Some of her clothes were missing. That was when fear hit him fully. He picked up his phone and called her immediately. The call did not go through. He tried again. Number busy. He ran his hand through his hair. The children began to wake up and cry at the same time. He stood there for a moment, confused. Then reality settled in. She was gone. And for the first time, Daniel felt something heavier than anger. Regret. Deep, painful regret. The house that once felt noisy now felt overwhelming. 3 crying children. A messy living room. And no Edah. The weight of everything she had been carrying alone now stood directly in front of him. And this time, there was no one to blame. Daniel had never noticed how loud mornings were. Not until Edah left. The day she disappeared, he stood in the middle of the living room holding his phone, staring at her contact name on the screen. He had called 5 times already. Each time, the same thing happened. Number busy. Behind him, the children started crying at the same time. "Daddy!" Ethan shouted from the bedroom. Noah's voice followed. Lily began to cry loudly. Daniel closed his eyes for 1 second. Just 1 second. Then he walked toward their room. Okay, I'm coming," he said, trying to sound calm. But he wasn't calm. He was confused. He was scared. And somewhere deep inside, he knew why she left. The boys had removed their pajamas. Lily had taken off her diaper. The bed was a mess. Daniel stared at the scene. How did Edah do this every day? He picked up Lily first and carried her to the bathroom. She cried and struggled. The boys ran out of the room laughing. "Come back here," Daniel shouted. They ignored him. By the time he finished bathing one child, the other 2 had poured water on the bathroom floor. His work shirt was already wet. It wasn't even 7:30 a.m. He managed to dress them after almost an hour of struggle. One refused to wear shoes. One wanted a different shirt. Lily cried because her hair was being brushed. Daniel was sweating heavily. He checked the time. He was already late for work. He rushed them to the car, buckling them in with shaking hands. On the way to school, they argued in the back seat. One pushed the other. Someone cried again. Daniel's head pounded. When he finally dropped them off, he felt like he had already worked a full day. Halfway to the office, something hit him. The lunch packs. He forgot them at home. He hit the steering wheel lightly. "How could I forget?" he muttered. He turned the car around immediately. But going home would waste time. Instead, he stopped at a nearby eatery and bought food for them. It cost more than he expected. By the time he reached the office, it was almost 10:30 a.m. His boss looked at him with raised eyebrows. "Everything okay?" "Yes, Daniel lied. Just traffic. But the day didn't go smoothly. He couldn't focus. He kept checking his phone. He tried calling Edah again during lunch break. Still nothing. Around noon, his phone rang. It was the school. "Mr. Daniel, one of your sons is not feeling well. Please come and pick him up." Daniel closed his eyes. "I'm on my way," he said. He left the office again. When he reached the school, Ethan was sitting quietly, looking weak. The teacher handed him over with concern. Daniel carried him to the car gently. On the drive home, he realized something painful. Edah had done all this alone. When they got home, the house was exactly as they left it that morning. Shoes near the door. Dishes in the sink. Toys on the floor. Daniel laid Ethan on the couch and checked his temperature. Slight fever. He tried to remember what Edah usually did in moments like this. Medicine. Warm bath. Light food. He searched the cabinet for medicine. It took him 5 minutes to find it. 5 minutes that felt like forever. By evening, the other children were back from school. The house became noisy again. Daniel decided to cook something simple. But cooking while watching 3 toddlers was almost impossible. Noah kept pulling his leg. Lily cried because she wanted to be carried. Ethan wanted water every 5 minutes. "Just sit down," Daniel shouted. They didn't. When he tried helping them with simple homework activities, they ignored him. They ran around the house, laughing and screaming. "Please," he begged at one point. "Just stay in one place." His voice grew hoarse from shouting. He had never felt so powerless in his own home. Finally, after hours of struggle, the children fell asleep. Daniel looked around. The house was a disaster. Plates in the sink. Food on the floor. Toys everywhere. Clothes scattered. He wanted to clean. But his body refused. He dropped onto the couch, exhausted. And for the first time since Edah left, he allowed himself to think clearly. This was just one day. One day. And he felt like he was breaking. The next morning was worse. He barely slept. The children woke up twice during the night. One needed water. Another cried from a bad dream. Daniel's head felt heavy. He repeated the same routine: bathing, dressing, feeding, school drop-off. He arrived at work late again. His boss called him into the office. "Daniel, this is not like you. Is something wrong?" Daniel hesitated. "Yes," he admitted quietly. "I need a few days off." His boss studied him for a moment before nodding. "Take care of whatever it is." Daniel drove home feeling defeated. The second evening alone felt longer than the first. Cooking, cleaning, homework, bathing, everything felt like climbing a mountain. He lost his patience more than once. He raised his voice. He sighed loudly. He felt frustrated. But every time he looked at his children's faces, he felt something else. Guilt. He remembered the night he called Edah lazy. Lazy. The word now sounded foolish. There was nothing lazy about this life. On the third day, he didn't even try to pretend he had control. The house stayed messy longer. Dinner was late. The children sensed his frustration and became even more restless. That night, after they finally slept, Daniel sat alone in the living room. The silence felt heavy. He looked at his hands. The same hands that had slapped his wife. His chest tightened. What had he become? He picked up his phone and called Edah again. No answer. He sent a message this time. "I'm sorry." He stared at the screen, hoping to see the typing sign. Nothing. The next morning, he drove to Edah's parents' house. His heart pounded as he knocked on the door. Her father opened it. Daniel swallowed hard. I came to see Edah. She's not here, her father said calmly. Daniel stepped inside anyway and explained everything. He did not hide what he did. He admitted the slap. He admitted the insult. Her mother's face showed deep disappointment. You broke her heart, she said softly. Daniel lowered his head. I know. Love is not only about providing money, her father added. Respect matters. Daniel nodded silently. Can you keep the children here for a few days? He asked weakly. Her father shook his head. They belong with you. Daniel left feeling even smaller. On his way home, he made another stop. His sister's house. She opened the door with surprise. Daniel. What's wrong? He stepped inside and immediately noticed something. Her house was clean but not perfect. Her children were calm. A young woman sat at the table helping them with homework. That's their tutor, his sister explained. And the nanny is in the kitchen. Daniel felt something twist inside him. You have help, he asked quietly. Of course, she replied. Raising children is not a one-person job. Daniel couldn't speak. He thought about Edah again. About how she had been doing everything alone. And he had called her lazy. He suddenly felt ashamed of himself. That night, back in his empty feeling house, Daniel sat on the floor surrounded by toys. He finally understood something important. Providing money was not enough. Being a husband meant more than paying bills. Being a father meant more than shouting instructions. He had learned the hard way. And now, all he could do was hope it wasn't too late to fix what he had broken. When Edah left the house that morning, she did not know exactly where she was going. She just knew she could not stay. Her cheek no longer hurt physically, but her heart felt bruised. The early morning air was cool against her skin as she stood by the roadside, holding her small bag tightly. For a moment, she almost turned back. But then she remembered the sound. The slap. She closed her eyes and flagged down a taxi. She did not go to her parents' house immediately. She didn't want drama. She didn't want shouting. She didn't want anyone insulting her husband on her behalf. Instead, she went to her friend Amora's apartment. Amora had known Edah since university. She was the kind of friend who listened before speaking. When Amora opened the door and saw Edah standing there with a bag, she didn't ask too many questions. She simply stepped aside and said, "Come in." Edah tried to be strong. She really tried. But the moment she sat on Amora's couch, she broke down completely. Not loud crying. Just deep, shaking tears. Amora sat beside her and held her hand. What happened? She asked softly. Edah took a long breath. He slapped me. Amora froze. What? Edah nodded slowly. He said I'm lazy. That I do nothing all day. The words felt painful even as she repeated them. Amora's face hardened with anger. After everything you've been doing for those children. Edah wiped her face. I don't even know when he changed. For the first 2 days, Edah refused to answer Daniel's calls. Not because she hated him. But because she was still hurt. Still shocked. She needed silence to think clearly. Meanwhile, her parents already knew something was wrong. Mothers always know. Edah's mother had called Amora quietly to confirm her suspicion. She is safe, Amora assured her. A few days later, Daniel showed up at her parents' house. He confessed everything. He did not try to defend himself. He did not blame stress. He did not blame work. He simply said, I was wrong. Edah's father listened without interrupting. Her mother's eyes were full of disappointment. You raised your hand against your wife, her father said finally. That is not the man we thought you were. Daniel lowered his head. I know. Her parents were angry, but they also noticed something. He looked different. Not proud. Not defensive. Broken. When Edah's mother later called her, her voice was calm. He came here, she said. Edah was silent. He admitted everything. He looked ashamed. Edah swallowed. I'm not ready, she said softly. I know, her mother replied. But don't close your heart completely. That night, Edah sat by Amora's window, staring at the city lights. I don't know if I can go back, she whispered. Amora looked at her carefully. Do you still love him? Edah didn't answer immediately. Love does not disappear overnight. Yes, she admitted quietly. But I'm scared. Amora nodded. Then don't go back because of pressure. Go back only if he truly changes. Back at home, Daniel was struggling. 3 days had felt like 3 months. He had taken leave from work because he could not focus. The house never stayed clean for more than 1 hour. He had stopped pretending he could handle everything perfectly. One afternoon, while trying to cook rice, the pot burned because he was helping Ethan in the bathroom. Smoke filled the kitchen. The children started coughing. Daniel rushed to open windows. He leaned against the wall afterward, breathing heavily. This was the life Edah had been living daily. He remembered every insult he had thrown at her. Lazy. Doing nothing. Whole day at home. He felt disgusted with himself. He picked up his phone again and typed a long message. I am sorry. Not just for the slap. For everything. I did not understand your work. I did not see your effort. I was proud and selfish. Please forgive me. He didn't know if she would read it. But he meant every word. The next day, he visited his sister again. She watched him carefully. You look terrible, she said honestly. I deserve it, he replied. His sister sat down beside him. Do you know what marriage is? She asked. Daniel sighed. I thought I did. It is partnership, she said firmly. Not competition. Not control. Partnership. He nodded slowly. I want to fix this, he said. Then fix yourself first, she replied. Apologize without excuses. And be ready to change your actions, not just your words. Daniel took her advice seriously. He contacted a domestic agency and began asking about hiring a nanny. He also searched for private tutors for the children. Not because Edah had demanded it, but because he finally understood that raising triplets without help was too much for one person. Meanwhile, Edah's parents decided to speak to her gently. Marriage is not easy, her father said during one of their phone calls. But violence is not acceptable. I know, Edah replied. If he truly repents, and you still love him, forgiveness is strength, not weakness. Edah thought about those words deeply. Forgiveness is strength. Days passed. Then one evening, Daniel called again. Edah stared at her phone for a long time. Her heart beat faster. Amora noticed. You don't have to answer, she reminded her. Edah took a deep breath. I think I'm ready to hear him. She answered. Hello. There was silence on the other end for 2 seconds. Then Daniel's voice came, soft and emotional. Edah. She had never heard him sound like that before. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I was wrong. Completely wrong. I disrespected you. I hate you. I hate our home. Edah listened quietly. I tried doing everything alone, he continued. Just for a few days. I almost lost my mind. I don't know how you've been doing it for 1 year. You're not lazy. You are strong. Stronger than me. Tears filled Edah's eyes. I miss you, he added. The children miss you. The house feels empty without you. She closed her eyes. Will it happen again? She asked softly. No, he replied firmly. Never. I have already arranged for a nanny. And you can choose a tutor for the kids. If you want to go back to work, I'll support you. I promise I will never raise my hand against you again. Edah felt her heart soften. Not because he bought help, but because he finally understood. I need respect, she said. You have it, he replied. After the call ended, she sat quietly. Amora watched her carefully. Well, her friend asked. Edah wiped her tears. He sounded different. Amora smiled gently. Sometimes people need to experience what they take for granted. 2 days later, Edah went back home. Daniel was waiting at the door before she even knocked. When he saw her, he walked toward her slowly. He didn't rush. He didn't grab her. He simply said, "Welcome home." Tears rolled down Edah's face as he hugged her gently. That hug felt different. It wasn't pride. It wasn't control. It was gratitude. The children screamed with joy when they saw their mother. Daniel stepped back and watched them hold her tightly. And in that moment, he understood something clearly. Love is not proven by money. It is proven by respect. And he had finally learned his lesson. Red heart. When Edah stepped back into the house, it did not feel exactly the same. It was familiar. But something had shifted. The walls were the same color. The couch was in the same place. The children's laughter still filled the air. But this time, there was awareness. Daniel stood slightly behind her as she entered, almost as if he was afraid to come too close. Not because he didn't want to hold her, but because he didn't want to rush her. Trust, once cracked, does not fix itself in one hug. The children ran toward her immediately. Mommy. Ethan grabbed her leg. Noah wrapped his small arms around her waist. Lily lifted her hands to be carried. Edah knelt down and held all 3 of them as tightly as she could. Tears streamed down her face freely. I missed you so much, she whispered. Daniel watched quietly. That moment alone made him realize how much he had taken for granted. Later that evening, after the children were asleep, Edah walked slowly around the house. It was cleaner than she expected. Not perfect, but different. There were fresh flowers in a small vase on the dining table. Daniel noticed her looking. I wanted it to feel welcoming, he said softly. She nodded. I've already hired someone, he added carefully. She starts next week. You can meet her first. If you don't like her, we'll find someone else. Edah looked at him. And the tutor? She asked. I found 2 options. You can choose which one you prefer. The fact that he said you can choose mattered. It showed respect. That night, they sat on the couch together, leaving a small space between them. For a few minutes, neither spoke. Then Daniel broke the silence. I was proud, he admitted. I thought providing money was enough. I thought because I was tired from work, my stress mattered more. Edah listened quietly. I didn't see your stress, he continued. I didn't ask how you were feeling. I just complained. She took a slow breath. It wasn't just the slap, she said finally. It was everything before it. The words. The way you looked at me. Like I was failing. Daniel's eyes filled with regret. I'm sorry, he said again. There's no excuse. There was something different about his apology this time. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't defensive. It was humble. Edah leaned back against the couch. I need partnership, she said softly. Not control. I left my job because we agreed. But somewhere along the way, it started to feel like I was beneath you. Daniel shook his head immediately. You were never beneath me. But you made me feel that way, she replied gently. That truth sat between them for a moment. Daniel reached out slowly and took her hand. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never feel that way again. The days that followed were not magically perfect. Healing takes time. The nanny arrived the next week. Her name was Grace. She was calm, patient, and experienced with children. Edah spent 2 full days observing her carefully before fully relaxing. Daniel didn't rush her decision. When the tutor started coming in the evenings, the house became more organized. The children had structure. Homework time became calmer. For the first time in a long while, Edah had small moments to breathe. Moments to sit quietly. Moments to drink tea while it was still hot. Moments to feel like herself again. Daniel also changed his routine. He no longer came home and immediately complained. Instead, he asked, "How was your day?" And he waited for the answer. Sometimes Edah tested him. She would talk about small details just to see if he was listening. He listened. Not perfectly every time, but intentionally. On Saturdays, he started taking the children to the park alone for a few hours. Go rest, he would tell her. The first time he did it, Edah stood by the window watching them leave. She felt nervous, but also grateful. Slowly, trust began to rebuild. Not because of gifts. Not because of flowers. But because of consistency. Yes, Daniel started bringing her small things when he returned from work, her favorite chocolate, flowers, sometimes a handwritten note. But what mattered more was his tone. His patience. His presence. One evening, about a month after she returned, the power went out. The house was dark except for a small rechargeable lamp. The children were already asleep. Edah and Daniel sat on the floor in the living room, leaning against the couch. It felt strangely peaceful. Daniel looked at her. You know, he said quietly, I used to think my job was the hardest thing in the world. Edah smiled slightly. And now, she asked. He laughed softly. Now I know better. She looked at him. I learned something important, he continued. Never assume someone's work is easy until you try it. I learned that the hard way. Edah laughed. You definitely did. They both laughed together, not forced laughter, but real laughter. The kind that comes after surviving something difficult. Daniel turned serious again. I will never forget those 3 days, he said. Not because they were stressful, but because they showed me how blind I had been. Edah squeezed his hand. And I learned something too, she admitted. What? That I should never keep quiet when I feel overwhelmed. I kept everything inside until I exploded. Daniel nodded. We both made mistakes, he said. Yes, she agreed. But only one of us slapped the other. He winced slightly. I will carry that shame forever, he replied honestly. Edah looked at him carefully. You don't need to carry shame forever, she said softly. But you need to remember the lesson forever. I will, he promised. Months later, Edah decided to return to work part-time. Not because she was forced. Not because she needed money. But because she wanted to. Daniel supported her fully. He adjusted his schedule when needed. The nanny and tutor continued helping. The house was no longer resting on one person's shoulders. It became a shared effort. One night, as they prepared for bed, Daniel pulled her gently into his arms. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For not giving up on us. Edah rested her head against his chest. Don't make me regret it, she replied softly. He smiled. I won't. Their marriage was no longer built on assumptions. It was built on understanding. No longer on pride. but on partnership. And this time, when they laughed together in the quiet of their home, it felt stronger. Because they both knew something important now. Love is not just about saying, I provide. It is about saying, we carry this together. And this time, they truly did.
Thanks for watching.
And do well to tell us where you are watching from.
Bye. Bye.